WV Uncommon Place. This podcast is a variety podcast that houses numerous series to cover mental health, empowerment, podcast framework, and various intimate theories to get to know the hosts. Along with occasional movies reviews and dives in pop culture with our event podcast episodes. The Uncommon Place digs into bringing guests on that stories don't fit the mold and are very different. WV stands for the great state of West Virginia, and every quarter we cover something in West Virginia. Stacey and myself, JR, are your hosts, so please come along for this venture to our Uncommon Place.
Hi, I'm JR.
And I'm Stacey.
And today, this show that we're about to do, this is a special request from King Germ of the Frocast. We watched a movie that has a character in it. And this guy that's in it, he's an amazing actor. And I give him his chops because you know him as McSteamy. McSteamy, whatever.
I was going to say, don't you dare say they're the same thing.
They're not the same thing. Patrick Dempsey, he was a 1980s heartthrob, even though he was just a skinny little thing. And we watched a grand movie called Loverboy. Now, before we get into any detail about Loverboy, let me give these acting chops out. This movie had Kirstie Alley in it, God rest her soul, and they had Carrie Fisher, which you would know as Princess Leia, in it. She had a little short hair dude. It looked like she aged a little bit in this one, even because this was towards the tail end of the 80s. Now, Loverboy comes across as, how do I put it? Because 80s movies are different. What was okay to talk about and do then, you wouldn't get away with now because of the sensitivity of our world now.
Right.
And the premise of this movie, and to just be cool and calm about it and say it the way I really want to say it, is like this. Loverboy, he's a gigolo. He works at a pizza delivery service. And the son's owner is very enthusiastic about women, and then there's a foreign character that's not enthusiastic about women. The women just clamor to him because he's the Italian stallion type deal. And then you have Patrick Dempsey. His character is that 1980s punk rock character at the very beginning, and he's a fairly charming guy in this. He just has the right way and the right look and the right way of reaching the female audience he attracts. And from there, that's where these escapades take place. And a pizza with anchovies will get you what, Stacey?
A little something extra.
And, you know, on this one, and shout out to King Germ for this, because he gave us a really exciting movie for myself, because everybody knows I'm an 80s baby and I've clamored to the 80s. Patrick Dempsey's character, he is in this to win this, even though he's had a few issues. He had a girlfriend in college, and he's flunking out of college. And his dad's like, "You gotta get a job." all at the time, his mom and dad are having relationship issues that shouldn't have happened at all.
Right. I noticed that too. I'm like, I don't know. We watched this on a Saturday, and I just wasn't 100% drawn into the movie, to be honest. So when I finally looked up at the one point, like what you're talking about, I'm like, wait a minute, he's not doing that. What's going on?
Yeah, so the dad, he passes out drunk and it's kind of suspicious. He drives to his office, and they have a trailer that they work out of because he's a foreman at a construction yard. And there's a young lady that has to use it to sleep there because something happened at her place, and he falls asleep beside her. And the questionable thing about her is that she just lets him sleep beside her. It's her boss, so you're not going to mess up your paycheck. Now, the further and further this movie goes on, it's a lot of sexual escapades, and he razzles and dazzles these women, and you don't see anything per se. It's just a lot of flopping around, moving around. But the thing that he does for Kirstie Alley, it's not about sex between them two. I mean, obviously they have sex, but it's more about the attention. And that's one thing that each one of these women are not getting from their husbands or whoever they are to them. And it's some notable characters in here. The arch nemesis to Patrick Dempsey is McNamara from freaking nip tuck.
Right. It took us a minute to realize it. I think it wasn't until he came on the second time
Yeah.
that we're like, you pointed it out, you know, we know that guy. I'm like, yeah.
And let me do some correlation real quick for you all. So think about this. They both go on later in life to be on medical shows.
Yeah.
Both work in surgery
Yep.
at some extent, you know. McNamara obviously does plastic surgery, but still. And it's kind of ironic that it plays out.
Well, you know, in Grey's Anatomy, Derek's best friend is a plastic surgeon.
Yeah, so it was kind of crazy how this plays out. And then seeing Kirstie Alley in it the way that she was, and Carrie Fisher, because Carrie Fisher in this movie, it was weird. He started photographing her. He started taking what would become what we call the social media expression. It was made in this movie kind of because he took a lot of pictures of her and he made her feel good. And it was not so much about the sexual prowess of Patrick Dempsey. It was more about the theme to me of, hey, we need to give our women attention, or our spouse, give our lover attention. If you're not going to give them the direct attention, then they're going to indirectly find it somewhere else. And that's what all these women did.
Right.
And the movie played out like any normal 80s movie. There was a chase. There was a hunt for Loverboy. And then Loverboy was found.
Mm-hmm.
And when Loverboy was found, it was mistaken that it was McNamara.
Right.
So, you know, Patrick Dempsey and his actual girlfriend got away, and they talked a little bit, and there's no easy way to say that all summer long you've had sex with random women, but you made your way back to...
But you only did it so that way you can come back to college and be with her, yeah.
Yeah, he made a lot of money, because those anchovy pizzas, what was like $200 a pop?
I don't remember. It was something high.
And nothing, not to be like derogatory or anything, but he better been doing some cartwheels and flips and some extra stuff for $200. Mm-hmm. But in the real world, sometimes people just pay for conversation because sometimes they don't get that conversation at home. But we're not that relationship podcast. We're not that tie into that kind of stuff. But the huge merits in this movie for me was that it was well scripted. It had comedy in it. In the comedy, you have to think of the time frame for the comedy.
Right.
And if you don't do that, or if your mind is stuck in a parallel of, I don't understand 80s movies, this is not the movie for you to watch.
Right. If you're easily offended by comments, then don't watch it.
Right. That's one thing I will say there, because the joke and the humor about people's sexual preference and different things like that, you have to, like, that's a trigger thing. I'm telling you, if you are triggered by stuff like that, stay far away from this movie. Stay so far away that you don't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
I mean, honestly, like I said, if you get offended easily by somebody saying something or just by a picture, don't watch it. Do yourself a favor and skip this movie.
And this one is not a very long review because we watched it and it was a fairly quick movie, hour and 31 minutes. But it's one of those things, if you're going back to do the teen heartthrob movies of the 80s like that, 16 Candles, even if you're going back, let's see, there's other countless 80s movies that you can go back and check. You know, there's the Rat Pack that's from that time.
And if you guys couldn't tell by the way this whole review is going, JR's been a little extra talkative tonight, so he's taken over the mic a lot. And I guess more so just because it wasn't that I disliked the movie. It was hard for me to focus 100% attention on it. Most of the time I have either my computer or my phone that I'm also playing with while I'm watching TV. But I think it was just because it was so old, and like, I mean, no offense, because you know that was a year after I was born when it came out, so I'm not saying it that way. I don't know. It was different. It was really different. It wasn't what I expected it to be. By the way you guys talked about it, but it had some pretty good acting in it.
Okay, so you know, we have a rating system, and in our rating system, we make it up as we go along each episode. Is this a movie that can stay on your shelf?
No, I'd never watch this movie again.
Oh, snap. And the silence builds.
I know. I mean, it's just one of them movies that I mean, it can go in the trash. I don't know.
Okay. But I want to thank King Germ for suggesting this movie because it got me to go back into my nostalgic state. Right. I don't always press back in time, and the reason I'm talking so much is because I'm definitively from the 80s. 1985 put me in the middle of it.
Right.
So I'll call it.
Was this a weekend that I was sick?
Yeah, you had that extra whatever you had.
I mean, I don't care. I caught the vid, so
yeah.
I was sick. And I think that's why I kind of feel the way I feel about it. Maybe if you would have caught me on a good weekend, I might have felt a little bit different. But still, I don't think I'd watch it again.
And for me, this movie, I obtain my movies however I obtain them. So it can stay on a hard drive. Well, actually, it didn't actually make the hard drive list. I'm sorry to say that. It made my SSD list, and that gets deleted. It won't make a hard drive decision for me because it's not a movie that people are chasing after.
So it's a 0 for you too?
Yeah.
Or do you, maybe a 1?
It's going to be a 0.
Okay. See, we agree on that.
Well, it's just like this. There's way too much more quality 80s movies that follow rom-com type stuff. But just it being a Patrick Dempsey movie, and he had quite a few movies that string along, and if you watch them all in progression, you appreciate that movie more. So me seeing all his stuff, I have to put it at the bottom of the barrel of the movie season because he ran the 80s pretty well. He's sort of like...
So, I mean, I guess for you it would be a 1. Because you didn't think it was trash.
No.
Okay, yeah. So I think your scale, like he said, we don't have a really great scale, so we got to kind of work on it. And I'll explain to him behind the scenes what the scales are in my mind, and we'll try to figure it out.
Right, so I'll say this. Because I'm going back to thinking about actors of that time. Mm-hmm. And it's one guy in particular that stands beside him, and he is on 911 Lone Star. And he was a heartthrob at that time, too. So it's kind of like both of them, the lead character from 9/11, Lone Star, was in the 80s at the same time running around doing the Lost Boys and all them different type of movies, too. So it's kind of like if you knew them two and you compare movies at the time they're rom-coms, it kind of threw me in, and I don't know why I don't have the Lone Star character's name in my head because I know him. It just slipped in my head.
I know we haven't watched it this week, so we're a little behind. Owen Strand?
Yeah, Owen Strand. What's his real name?
Rob Lowe. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, so Rob Lowe.
Why did I not know that?
And Rob Lowe him and Rob Lowe fall into the same category because they're older now, and you go back and watch our movie, they kind of have a parallel acting chops when it comes to those 80s movies. So maybe that's why I appreciate it a little bit because Rob Lowe was the man back in the 80s.
Okay.
The movie that he's in, I hope it was The Lost Boys, whatever the movie was that had him, it had Matt Dillon in it, all these dudes, Pony Boy. We'll have to watch that at some point. But anyway, to wrap this thing up and to just keep this going, I want to say real quick, I want to thank everybody that has paid attention to this podcast and everybody that has voiced opinions and told me that we should keep doing this type of stuff over in another podcast, which our podcast is called Sparrows Under Review. And it's not an extension or a branch off, but it's in the family of the West Virginia and Commonplace podcast. So I definitely want to say this. Stacy has been very influential in sitting down with me, watching movies and breaking things down. And then, once again, a nice, huge thing to King Germ. Thank you, King Germ, for suggesting this movie because it was something that you liked and it was kind of like a soft-core cinema.
But I'm going to have to tell you not to do it again.
Oh, snap. Shots fired. Shots fired. Shots fired.
That's all right. I got to throw that out there on him.
Yeah, we have a good time with him. And that's one thing I will say inside podcasting. It's amazing some of the people that you meet through the internet and their characters and personas.
Or you've never talked to before and you have a whole conversation on the phone for a little bit.
Yeah, and he is the king of AKAs. The Duke of Dignity. We can't say his other stuff on here, but, Duke of Dignity. We'll give him that one. So, in closing, I'm JR.
And I'm Stacy.
And this is Sparrows Under Review.
Please follow WV Uncommonplace on Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, TikTok where we have some great content, Facebook, LinkedIn. Hit up the merch store at oncommonplace.square.site. Join the email list from the website, and rate, subscribe, and give feedback from your favorite podcatcher. And lastly, thanks for listening, and tune into the next episode.